Hey, this is Key Creative Studio, and that's Drawing Japan. Let's make a point to draw every day. I'm gonna talk today about uh, one of the problems I think people have when it comes to like drawing the head or actually any other part of the body. Actually, um, one of the things that really helped me when I first started drawing was of course like to see things as very large shapes, right? And when I talk about that, I'm referring like the basic shapes, which is um, you know um, a sphere, a triangle, or a square, right? So actually, no. Actually, the first thing I said sphere, right? So already, I'm thinking about how I can get my mind to see things like three dimensionally. So I didn't say circle. Actually, I said sphere. So that is this goes to show you, how much I try to consider seeing things not just as a shape but as a volume, right? So instead of like a triangle, I'm thinking more like a pyramid shape, right? And when I talk about the square, I'm talking more about like a cube kind of shape, right? All right. Now that's all nice and good, whatever. But the I think the one that probably has like the most value, when we're first learning how to draw, actually is understanding. Let me put this picture away because it might be a little distracting for you guys. A little distracting for me, actually. One second. Okay, good. All right. Um, I think the most important thing we can learn is how to draw a sphere in the beginning. And when I say learning to draw a sphere, I don't necessarily mean just, having um, just this graphic form, but to really understand it. Um, Not to understand it as a flat 2D shape, but something, that has like a center, right? Has a center axis, like this basically, right? So from all these points going out, they are relatively equal, right? In all ways, whether it's going out, even like going away from what's in space, so that's what creates a sphere. And actually, I think that's quite, uh, in terms of nature, I think it's a little bit profound because the sphere, in terms of like being an element in nature, it's something we see a lot. Um, you see it in like in water droplets actually, like if you have like a water drop, and if it's like in a zero gravity situation, what happens is like the droplet actually forms into like a sphere. Of course we imagine this kind of shape, which is another thing I want to get into also. But the reason why the water takes this shape is because like gravity is pulling it down, right? So because like this part is like like where all the volume is being pulled, and then like the other areas that are like it's trailing behind like that. But if it was zero gravity, yeah, the sphere or the water droplet would look something more like that. So we have to train ourselves to learn how to not only be able to draw this form, but also to understand it as a physical property. Okay, so uh, further, all right, what I really wanted to really focus on today is really like understanding like the sphere as a property in space, all right, um, and I, what I really want to focus on really is when I talk about space, I guess I'm talking about like perspective in this case, right? Particularly when it comes to like drawing the head. Okay, that's something that a lot of people have problems with. Um, so when it comes to like drawing the head, um, we really have to, yes, we have to understand like the planes and of the head and things like that. But overall, you have to be able to draw the head in a convincing way, that it looks like a three-dimensional object, that is in space and that has a volume to it. Again, that has a volume to it. So, we're not drawing, you know, um, something like this. Okay, and I'm gonna like put eyes like this. I mean, this could work. Okay, if I'm trying to, maybe do some sort of like caricature or something like that. But this is a very flat looking thing, right? Also, you notice like when I was drawing, I went like on one side and then I went like, and then I'm trying to trace around it. So that's not the experience that I'm looking for like when I'm creating my shapes um, on my on my page. Um, what I'm trying to do is to create a form that feels complete in itself. So when I draw a sphere, right? So you see how I swept that like this, right? And I've said this exercise a million times in terms of like drawing spheres, not circles, but spheres, like gliding, you know, on your page. So one, you can get this sweeping sensation, and also train your arm to essentially to draw a form that is relatively like equal on all sides. Okay, you don't want to draw like this, like or or I can't tell you like how many times I've seen people do stuff like that when I ask them to draw a sphere, right? Because maybe they're not really thinking about it. So when you draw a sphere, you really have to do it lightly and like realize that and actually like shape it out as you draw. I mean, it's not going to be a mathematically computer generated perfect circle. Like you can do like in Procreate or something like that, or if I pulled out, sorry, oops. Yeah, if I pulled out like one of these kinds of shapes like that, which is you know mathematically um, already set for me. It's not that kind of thing. No, right? And we're not necessarily trying to get that. You know, sometimes when things are too perfect, it looks too perfect. Us as artists, we're trying to get the spirit of something, and allowing a certain amount of our own license to uh, put our abstraction, the abstraction of our understanding on it. because that's what people are really interested in seeing, right? Of course, they don't want to. Well, some people maybe they do want to see that, but they want to see not necessarily this and not necessarily this and like not necessarily this either. They want something in between, which is kind of what is a fact, like this, because this is fact, and of course that's abstraction, right? And either extreme is not the way, but so something in between, which is um, just like believability. That's something which attracts us. That's what gets us. A Rubens. That's what gets us. Um, a Frazetta. Or or whoever your favorite artist or cartoonist is. It's never quite exactly um, literal perfect like this, right? Okay, all right. So let me get to what I really wanted to talk about, which is space. Okay. All right. So the big question here is it's a matter of perspective. Okay. All right. So that's the dirty word, the dirty P word, perspective, which no one loves. Okay. I've yet to meet a single person, whether they're a student or they're a working professional. I've never met a person who just simply says, I just love perspective, right? Nobody likes perspective, but it's something that we have to make friends with in order to draw with more license and with more confidence, right? So if I have my sphere here, right? So like where is it in space? All right, so this is the top and like this is the bottom, right? Okay. So like if you look at a basketball, right? You see like oops, do that again. Um, you notice like how you have like these lines, that go around it, that go over the contour, like that. So when you have these kinds of lines, we can immediately see this as a three-dimensional form, and automatically, we can see like this is going around. As things goes towards the top, this part, these lines are converging, and these lines also at the bottom are also converging. Okay. So got a lot of spears on this page. So let's really jump into it. Okay. So how does the drawing balls, or drawing spheres, relate to drawing a head, okay, and perspective, right? So if we have a box and it's facing us head on like this, right? We can only imagine like what the top and the bottom is, right? We can't see it because this is in a 1 point perspective, right? So because 'cause everything is going like to this point, so we can't see what's on the top and we can't see what's on the bottom because everything's converging like that. So in relation to a head, that's going to be the same kind of situation, right? If we have a head here, okay, it's doing just a quick one here. there's no way that we're going to be able to really see the top of this person's head, because they're facing us head on. Okay. Now, of course, there are little things we can imply, like maybe the overlap here, um, but or even like hair or something like that. But the problem is, we're still we're not going to know what's really on top of this person's head, right? Okay, so we have that. So let's say I have this where I turn it on its side. So I have 2-point perspective, right? Going this way, right? All right. Similar problem. We still can't see the top or the bottom of this box, right? Right. So if we were going to apply this to, let's say, a person, okay, now despite what we might think we see, we still cannot fully see the real top of this person's head, because it's really it's in a two point perspective. I mean, there are things that can be implied by it, but we're not gonna get the full view of the top of the head. Okay, so that's something we have to keep in mind here. Okay. Again, our brain is kind of like filling in a lot of the um, it's filling in a lot of the gaps, in terms of um, seeing this as a three-dimensional thing. We think we might be seeing like top of the top of the head, but we're really not actually, because we're kind of like um, we're looking at it, you know, from this perspective. Okay, so now, all right, now we're gonna get to something here. So if I do a box like this, now we can see the top of the box. Now we truly can see the top of the box, right? So we actually see what's going, and because all these things are converging down here. Okay, all right. Now I want you also to keep in mind, in these examples that I've drawn here, um, I'm still adhering to creating the sense of a three-dimensional volume, right? Of a form here, right? I didn't draw like this a flat box here. So so when you draw these forms, you have to have some sort of sense of these things being a volume. Otherwise, it's gonna look funky. It's gonna look funny, right? So if I was to draw a head, right? Well, okay, where's the top of the head? All right, so I'm gonna draw a line like that. So let's imagine we're looking down like that. So that's the top of the head here. So that means if I drop things down like this, right? Now, we're getting a sense of it, of us like looking down on this figure, right? Because now, this cranial area is much larger, and the other areas, like such as like the chin or whatever, that is going away from us. It's tapering down away from us, right? Again, this is the top of the head, right? You know, this guy over here, Kojak over here, over here, we can't see this top point, because he's in two point, and we can't see it over here on this one either, right? But we can see, you know, we can see the top of the head, from this position like that. Okay. So when it comes um, to drawing the head, okay, um, it would be helpful. Let me take all these out. It'd be helpful to you to when you lay it in, right? If it's like 1 point perspective, okay, right? That means that we cannot see the top of the head, okay? And I know this is very rough, but you got to see that as a volume, okay? If it's 2 point perspective, all right, we're gonna get something like this. Okay. It's here. Sorry. I don't wanna over labor. I just want you guys to get the idea for this. And if it's 3 point, that means we can look down on it. Again, if it helps, like draw a perspective line for yourself, and fine, if it helps, like put an X there, so you'll know where it is, okay? And actually that helps a lot, because this helps me to understand that the center of the head is actually going to be going down like that, okay? Which means like the nose is going to be here, which means like the mouth is going to be like that. It's going to be the chin is going to be like that. Cheekbones are going to be like this. Okay. This is still going around. You notice, when you draw things, like, or at least when you draw the head in this position, you get these overlaps, right? Like you get like the brow, which is like overlapping. Well, it's starting like to overlap the eyes, right? In other words, like the eyes will, over here, will be kind of be like in clear view, like that. But from this perspective, the eyes are being overlapped, right? The nose is like it's overlapping the face, right? Um, the mouth actually is a little bit like it's overlapping like part of the jaw, the lower part of the jaw, right? Okay, but I'm saying all this, to really, to consider what you're drawing, as a volume. Okay, you don't want to draw like um, flat two-dimensional shapes. Okay, what's going to help you is a healthy understanding of perspective. Okay, and look, like I said, nobody likes perspective. I don't think there are any like perspective like fan clubs out there, but it's something that you we all we have to make friends with it. You know, no, we don't have to be computer perfect. But you have to be able to understand it. If you don't make friends with perspective, okay, it's going to be your enemy. It's really that simple. And once you make friends with it, actually, you're once you have a very good like intuitive sense about it, you're not gonna worry about it. You're not gonna be thinking about it. You'll do it intuitively. Okay, all right. I hope that's a little bit helpful for you. And I will be back again soon with another video, actually, because I do want to talk more about the value of like understanding the sphere, because we can take this into other realms as well. Today I'm talking about understanding in space, but also we can understand how to use this to imply things like weight, and I'll do that in the next video. All right, see you next time. Bye bye.